we as coaches have to maybe be the coolest heads, but the decisions are all being made on the field by the players.
Yeah, which is
And
awesome.
it is such a metaphor for life, our game, and that's why I'm so passionate about it, and that's why I love it so much.
Welcome to the Growth Project. This is Milt Lowder with my good friend, as well as the head coach of men's soccer at Clemson University, Mike Noonan, Hall of Famer. My goal is for you to get a chance to coach the U.S. men's team one day. I don't know if I'm going to have enough pull for that. I would love to see you have that opportunity. So I think you're a third-time guest. You probably are that's probably the most guests we've had visit. So thanks for making yourself available.
Wow, I didn't realize I'm on that the pedestal of the Growth Project. But I love speaking with you, Milton, and to your audience. I think what you do is fantastic, and I listen to it all the time because it's really, really helpful.
Well, you've been such a blessing in my life and have expanded not only my understanding of sports psychology and how it plays out in terms of sports and life and developing the young men that we have a chance to interact with, but expanding my soccer knowledge. I think, admittedly, some of the things I laugh about over the years, the first time you wanted me to come in and talk about goal setting, and I'm running a little bit late, as I want to do, and I see Liam and Jonesy in the room, and I'm like, hey, where's Coach Noonan? It's like, oh, he's talking to the team. So what's he talking about? He's talking about goals. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I burst in the door. This is like 2010 or 11, like your first or second year. And you give me that great stare that is like, we didn't know each other that well yet. You're staring me down. And I'm like, hey, Coach, sorry I'm late. I'm sorry. I know you want me to talk about goal setting. And Jonesy and Liam said you're already talking. And you looked at me with this complete stare like you were an idiot. I'm talking to our team about where we score goals, and I look up on the screen, and you're breaking it down. I'm like, oh, I got to get used to this language.
Well, you've never been an idiot. You've only added value to our program. And again, we at 17 years of education, I think we can call you a semi-expert now in our sport.
Yeah, I'm getting better. Like I used the other day, I was so proud. I was talking to a company, and I was like, hey, you got to get on the front foot. So I'm getting better, but it's been an amazing journey just to kind of watch what you've built at Clemson. But really wanted to take, you called me last week and said, hey, Milt, hey, what do you think happened with the U.S. men's team against Belgium? What do you think really was going on there? It was a completely different team, and we had a conversation. I know that's where we want to go, but a couple of things to talk about before we get there. Just your overall observations. I know you got to go to a game down in Atlanta. I think that was England and Argentina, I believe.
Yeah, I got to three.
You got to three?
I got Morocco, Canada down in Houston, and I got Switzerland and Colombia out in Vancouver, as well as the Argentina England game in Atlanta. So it was great.
Wow. And so your thoughts of having this and hosting this, what were your overall thoughts on the whole experience?
Well, I think the games were phenomenal. Right. I mean, the actual games and the play throughout the games was sensational. What the World Cup does, no matter where it is, brings the world together like no other sporting event. Maybe the Olympics, but it's not the same as the World Cup because of the passion that every nation holds. And I think for the United States, I can remember 1994 when the World Cup was here last. And it was almost a novelty. And out of that came the MLS and the professional league here, which is now taking a grip. And we've taken steps and stages, right? There was the Beckham factor when Beckham signed with LA. And then obviously the Messi factor, right? Which ratcheted the MLS up even more. But it's going to be interesting. This World Cup is going to leave a legacy. And the legacy it's going to leave is that for the last 5 weeks, this has been the sport on the sporting landscape. I mean, the British Open was played and there was a winner crowned yesterday. You can't even find it on the news, right? Because it's the World Cup final. And I think that our country embraced it. I was getting telephone calls and texts from Jim from Greenville. What about this rule? What about that? And there are people who are just fascinated with the pageantry and with what goes into this World Cup. And it was really the first time a lot of people in this country were exposed to it. That and the fact that I think there were certain points where the U.S. was playing where I said to my staff and I said to others that it was the best I've ever seen our national team play. And I'm really proud of that. And I think our country should be really proud of that. It was a disappointing ending, right? But for the US, but it certainly wasn't a disappointing ending yesterday because the right team won, the best team won.
Yeah.
And it was a great display of our sport.
Yeah, I've always thought if we could, as human beings across the world, even in America, think about and focus on the things that we have in common and focus on the things that unite us instead of divide us. Doesn't mean there aren't challenges and different views and philosophies. You and I have had some great conversations and debates over the years, which I've thoroughly enjoyed. But to me, I think that was great to see at least what America is supposed to be about on full display, and people from all over the world coming and experiencing that and having joy in the game, and the passion and the energy to watch was just brilliant, and so much fun to kind of sit and learn and just see the energy that it brought. So I appreciate your observations, and I love the thought that, hey, you saw us play some of the best soccer we've played.
No question. And again, I'm curious to see what is that legacy, and where do we go with the sport in the United States, and does it help, tick another box moving the MLS forward? How does it evolve the college game, which is going through a lot of changes now, and what that whole ecosystem will look like moving forward? And I really think that the World Cup left a footing and a foundation that there's only going to be great things to build upon.
So one question I just thought about as you watch this, and I know how you watch the game more as a coach than as a fan. What's maybe one or two things you're going to take away from all the soccer you watched? And I don't want to give any away secrets here, but what's something that really stood out to you about the way the game was played that you may try to put into play for your program and your team?
I'm a sports fan, right? We're all sports fans. Anybody who watched the World Cup has got some sporting fandom in them. And the cliche and the adage that defense wins championships, right? The Spanish team had 7 shutouts, only conceded 1 goal. Now they played attractive soccer. They had Lamine Yamal, and they had some amazing players. But the fact that in every sport, right, every team sport, defense wins championships. And if you watch the game yesterday, I think Spain, they said they only had like 14 or 17 shots against them in the entire tournament that were on goal.
Wow.
Argentina, one of the best teams in the world, only had 2 shots and none on goal yesterday with Messi on the team. And if you watched the game yesterday, it was what we call counter-pressing. Spain had most of the ball, but as soon as they lost the ball,
yes,
Argentina couldn't make 2 passes without Spain winning the ball back. And so I think that's certainly one of the great observations. And then I watch coaches, right? And we're going to talk about this. It's such a player-directed game that it's really hard for coaches to have an impact other than at halftime and this made-up hydration break thing that they had in this World Cup. But watching the decisions that some of the teams made, and I think we're going to talk about this, focusing on either playing not to lose or playing to win.
Yes.
And that is always, you talked about front foot, right? And being true to yourselves. We hear about that in every sport. And I think the teams that did that advanced the furthest. And the final thing I'll say is that it's the representation. I think the United States still has another step to go in the fact that I feel strongly that we played, right, to represent the United States of America. Our team did. And we were proud to do that. We played, right, to continue to engage people in our sport and to grow our sport here. That was the purpose. That's not the purpose for every other country. For every other country, they wanted to win for their people.
Yeah.
And that's a difference. And, that I'll bring back to Clemson, because when we play this fall, we want to win for our people and our people at Clemson.
Yeah, not just to represent. But
we
know we're going to become our best version of ourselves when we sacrifice to be a part of something greater. And so be proud of how you wear the pall, but remember why you're here. You're here to win it. Imagine what it would feel like if you win for everybody that you represent.
Correct. Yeah, and I think that's something that we have to keep in focus. And it's very hard for coaches, managers, bosses to keep that principle in focus while you're trying to do all the things it takes to get to that point.
Yeah, well, I look forward to seeing the defense come to life here on the field this year. So let's break down a couple of games. So let's just start yesterday. The final, Spain, Argentina. Your thoughts about the strategies and tactics going into the game? It looks like Spain executed their game plan really well. Just give the casual observer like me some thoughts of the matchup and how you thought the game played out.
Yeah, the game played out the way that I thought, other than the scoreline. I thought that Spain would score more goals, and I think you saw that a hot goalkeeper can keep a team. It has a goalkeeper in their sport in the game. We see it in the NHL, we see it in soccer quite a bit. But I think Spain was true to what they did throughout the tournament. They brought the French team in the semifinals to their knees with unbelievable amounts of talent on it because they were a team, and they didn't go any. I mean, it was the exact same plan against Argentina, was to dominate the ball, which they did, but when the ball turned over, they did not let Argentina in their attacking half of the field. And I think its structure, its purpose, but more than anything else, it was a fantastic team effort throughout the tournament. And Argentina, on the other hand, they're an experienced team, and their experience did them well in their semifinals and throughout the tournament because they are the king of the dark arts of the game. But I think it caught up with them.
So explain the dark arts a little bit to when you say the dark arts of the game, with the Argentinian spirit and culture and how they show up and how they fight. Tell us what you mean by that.
Well, that's what it is that they're willing to fight to the death to win the game in any way, shape, or form. And the dark arts are, the things Americans don't love about the game, right? The guys falling on the ground, the guys wasting time, the yellow cards, the pushing the edge right to the edge, or the fouling to disrupt the game, and just finding different ways. They knew that Spain was probably a better team, and that the tournament had probably taken more out of Argentina than out of Spain. So they were going to do anything they could to make sure that the game stayed at 0-0 and hope that Messi could find a way to win it for them or get it to penalties. And they did a fantastic job until they got the guy sent off for being a little overzealous.
And you thought that was the right call on the red card there yesterday? Yeah.
Well, it's a second yellow card.
Yellow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Both yellow cards were deserved. And he's Martinez is a passionate player, as all Argentinians are. But, there is a line, and he crossed the line.
Yeah.
Twice.
He was out of control to me, it seemed, the whole game. And so you just knew that passion. I think that's the hardest part, is how do you manage that emotion, that passion throughout the game.
And I think the second foul was frustration.
Yeah.
Right? Argentina could not get the ball back from the Spaniards, and it had gone, almost 100, 90 minutes. And that's a frustration comes out, like I said, not just in our sport, in all sports, when another team is dominating you, when you want to do the same thing to them, and it just becomes frustrating. And I think he let that, the emotional control that you and I talk about all the time is hard sometimes to control in those situations.
So one just question more on the counter pressing. What made Spain so effective at shutting Argentina down, and what could maybe Argentina could have done differently?
We talk a lot about the soccer brain, right? And the speed of their brain with the ball to keep the ball, but more important, the speed of their brain and angles to shut the ball, the passing angles out of the Argentinian team. And, they didn't man mark Messi, but they knew that everything was going to go through Messi. So, I mean, I think he had 3 touches or 4 touches in the first half of the game. So, it was tactically a masterclass, as it was against France. I mean, De La Fuente, an incredible coach who's grown up through their youth systems and got won an Olympics with many of the same players who he had there. The consistency of that in the Spanish team and in the Spanish country has now led to Spain holding the World Cup title for both the men and the women.
Which is pretty remarkable. You talk about a
Amazing.
program, yeah. So one other thing, I remember a game last year, 2 years ago. I think we took like at Clemson 25 shots. I don't know how many on goal and didn't score.
Hmm.
And and so I was thinking a little bit about that yesterday as Spain just kind of kept attacking and attacking and the goalkeeper in your language is standing on his head in that
Yeah.
process. Talking about the frustration for that as a team building, you're getting chances. How do you handle that part of the game?
Well, again, that was Western Michigan last year in the NCAA tournament that eliminated us 1-0.
Oh wow, okay.
And many other times last fall, Queens game. I mean, there were like three or
Yeah,
four
I think
games where
Queens is the one I was thinking about.
what happens is that again, the frustration again continues to mount, and staying consistent to the principles that you're trying to play to instead of going outside of those is something that the Spanish team did not. They were disciplined, and they're hoping they were going to get their opportunity, and eventually they did. But what happens to the players on the field is that they start pressing, and they get, we have to score now, or and players get more individualistic, and they think they have to take more responsibility on themselves, and again, what you're really doing is creating more chaos in your team. And it's really, really hard in our sport when those things are happening, right, to change things, because you don't have a timeout
Yeah.
and you can't stop the game. So that's it can be frustrating watching it from the sideline, and certainly frustrating when, like you said, the goalkeeper's standing on their head, players are throwing their bodies and sacrificing their bodies to block shots, and it can get, in our sport, because it is a low scoring sport, getting that first goal and then really getting the second goal is what will determine
Yeah.
more outcomes than not.
So it's maybe one thing we got to think about is how do we prepare the team for those opportunities when you're dominating the game, you're controlling it. How do you stay patient and look at the reasons you've been successful and not sacrifice that? That's a good thing to think about, prepare for.
And again, I think it really is mental, because the tactical application should stay the same, and the technique and the skill for you to be dominating the game, there's a reason for it, right?
Yeah.
So I do think, Milt, that it's a being able, and that's why golf is 18 holes and soccer's 90 minutes long, because you get in those late parts of the game where you have to keep that mental focus and concentration, and if it wavers at all, particularly under the emotional, you think of the World Cup, the emotional
Yes.
stressors and the physical stressors, and I think that's what really bit Argentina yesterday. They're an experienced team. They are the holders of the World Cup, but the man's 39 years old, and he's been playing in the heat every third day in the heat, and their team was older than the
Yeah.
Spanish team. Spain had two 19-year-olds on the field, right?
Just so.
And it's just amazing, their maturity is 19, but the Argentinian team looked slow and looked a little bit old and looked like their time had come.
Yeah. I think just a quick thought for most of our listeners who are not playing in the World Cup or are not coaching at the highest level, that happens so often in our business strategy or in our life that we let the emotions dictate our reactions and our responses instead of kind of informing us, hey, this isn't working. We compromise our game plan. We change our strategy. We're reacting to the demands of the competition or the market or whatever, instead of being able to evaluate and say, okay, what little tweak can I make right now, and not throw out the whole game plan because I'm not getting the immediate results. And I think that's what I love, the connection between sports and life and business is like, okay, what can we learn from these lessons and how might they apply to me? How am I handling my emotions? What is my mental preparation? Who am I leaning on for support? How do I not react just to the moment and make sure I'm playing the long game, or as we say all the time, for 90 minutes or as long as it takes.
And that's the beauty of our sport, because all those things have to be done by the players on the field. Yes, the coaches and leaders have to do all those things, maybe times two, right? As you're thinking about impacting the game with a substitute, you have to keep your emotions and those, and we as coaches have to maybe be the coolest heads, but the decisions are all being made on the field by the players.
Yeah, which is
And
awesome.
it is such a metaphor for life, our game, and that's why I'm so passionate about it, and that's why I love it so much.
And that is one thing I'll give you credit, because I know the intensity and the passion with which you live life and how you coach. But when I observe you on the sidelines, it's a very calm, at least exterior, relaxed, yeah, understanding that if you are not, what do we say all the time? It's not going to happen through you unless it happens first within you. That you don't want to ask your players to do something you aren't capable of doing.
And I think that's experience too. I wasn't always that way as a coach when I was younger, and it's also having good mentors like you and Bill and people who do observe me and help me stay centered and grounded in the most pressurized situations.
Yeah.
And my staff.
So let's get back to let's go to specific game. England, Argentina. You were there.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Absolutely fascinating from a coaching perspective and a game perspective, because England dominated the first 60 minutes or so of the game, and then they scored, and they were 1-0 up. And I don't think they were prepared for that moment as a team. When the game was even, they were fine, and Argentina wasn't really getting a kick of the game. And this is where I lean on you, Milt. And I do think that fatigue played a lot into this. I mean, the England team played at altitude in Mexico City. They played with 10 men down in Mexico, beating, a host country, and again, emotional output that is exhausting, right? They scored the goal in the 65th minute and just stopped playing.
Yeah.
And why that happened, the coach is getting a lot of heat online and over in England because they went into a defensive shell. But really, that's what happened on the field with the players. And if you look at the defending and the lack of energy that England played with from that point forward, it was inevitable that Argentina, with the talent they had and their experience at that point, never say die, the fight, the Argentinian spirit with, it felt in the stadium like there were 4 Argentinians to 1 English player before the game. And then when after England scored, it was like there were 5-1 in the stands. I mean, wow. They were so loud. And I think again, England just went on the back foot and tried to not lose the game with a 1-0 lead instead of, if there's anything, our trainer came in here the next day, her eyes looked at me and goes, there's one thing I learned from Coach Noonan is that when you're up a goal, you go and get the second one.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's a couple of things. One, the fatigue. What did Churchill say? Fatigue makes cowards of us all. And so when you run out of energy, it's hard. It takes energy to be courageous. It takes energy to be brave. It takes energy to stay focused on your game plan. So I think that's really important. How are you managing energy too? I think you said it best. They weren't prepared for that moment. And at that moment, when the magnitude of the moment becomes greater than what you are doing in the moment, it can shift away from your game plan. And it's just human nature. Our brain, remember, is created to protect us from threats. It's human nature just to hold on to what you have. And the coach probably didn't create that mindset, but I imagine with the defensive substitutions, he reinforced the mindset.
That's exactly what happened, Milt. That's why you're such a genius. Is that if he had brought on, I mean, there's a big controversy that Saka didn't play in the game, who's one of their best attacking players, didn't start the game and then didn't play in the game, and then in the third place game he scored 3 goals.
Wow.
Against France. So there's some controversy there. But if he had brought Saka on instead of Dan Burn, the extra defender, the message he would have been sending his team is that we're going to win this thing. Now we're going to defend this thing.
Yep.
And I think that was a critical error. That and like you said, it wasn't just that. I mean, the players, and you've got to think about this in the quarter, in the quarter, was it quarterfinals or the round of 16 game against Mexico, right? They went down to 10 men. They were up a goal. They had to defend because they were down a man, and that's what they did. Against Norway in the round of 8, right? They scored late. They didn't score early. They scored in extra time against Norway, right? And then they had to defend for a short period of time, and that's what they did. So they scored with 30 minutes left, and they said, "Okay, now it's time to hang on."
Wow!
And now it's time to defend because we've got the lead, and we did it the last 2 games. And it's just, again, you talk about human nature and the human mind. It just went into, all right, it's time to defend. And I think you need, in those situations, you have to prepare for 2 things. Well, not just that situation, but I think as a coach, you have to prepare for 2 things. You have to prepare for adversity and when things aren't going your way. And we'll talk about that with the U.S. And you have to prepare for a situation when things are going your way and maybe you don't expect it and what that reaction needs to be. And I would have brought an attacker on. I don't want to second guess. I'm not Thomas Tuchel. He's way advanced than I am. He's coaching in the World Cup. He's coaching in the World Cup. But Monday morning quarterbacking, you bring an attacking presence on because of the message it sends your team and the message it sends the other team.
Yeah. And also you got to know who you're playing as well. You know they aren't going to quit, and they look for those moments to attack. As you've described the Argentinian spirit so well, you got to know who's on the other side of the ball. And I imagine you could feel the momentum in the stands, and the energy is like Argentina never quit believing they were going to win. It sounded like.
Yeah, and again, you're studying your opponent. Argentina was down with 30 minutes to go, 2-0 to Egypt in the game beforehand, and came back and won the game, right? So you're going to get it. So you just got to keep giving it. You got to keep giving it and keep giving it and let the cards fall where they may. And again, I think that some people would say that may be tactical suicide, but you can still defend while you're attacking, right? 2 truths can be the same.
Absolutely. And I think, to me, what do we talk, like the research suggests in our life and in the game, you're going to regret what you didn't do instead of what you did.
Yeah.
And what you didn't do is you didn't really play to win. And you change completely the mindset that you had. The other thing that I think is so important for all of us, that it's hard to prepare for what you can't predict. And so what great coaches do and great players do, we got to visualize success. And how do we keep that mindset? What were the reasons that contributed to that success? And how do we learn from that? Now, you don't want to be reckless, but you also have to prepare for adversity. And so there's a huge difference in a reaction and a response. And maturity means we respond the right way. We stay focused on the way we play the game. We stay focused on the things we can control.
It's so difficult to do all that and to think that all through as the game's going on. And you're absolutely out of legs.
Yeah.
And that's why the substitutions, again, needed to be, I think, more in an attacking fashion with fresh legs than a defending fashion, because the attacking players, they were exhausted.
Yeah.
I mean, England's route to that point was exhausting. And they had played so well for 65 minutes to get the lead. And so, it's a fascinating, reflection of our game, but also a fascinating reflection of what happens, what I see in other sports. And,
yes,
I love being at Clemson and being in a lab that has such great coaches and has such great sport that you're constantly learning and constantly examining, different situations.
Well, I think, there's so many reasons that I love working with you and appreciate you, but that curiosity, you're constantly evaluating and observing. So I love kind of getting this knowledge of your thoughts on the game. So let's turn to kind of the U.S. men's team and its experience in the World Cup, and more specifically, what you and I wanted to really talk about today was a little bit of the red card controversy of not only getting the red card and whether it was the right call or not, but just some of the spirit of the game, the history of the game. whether they're ever appealed, how that might affect their preparation, how that might affect the mindset. So just overall, you said earlier you thought you observed the U.S. men's teams playing some of the best soccer it's ever played. What did you notice that seemed different or felt different?
Yeah, I think one, we were at home, right? And we absolutely came out of the gate flying against Paraguay. And again, the decision making, the athleticism, every part of the game. And that's a Paraguay team that beat Germany and sent Germany home, right?
Yeah.
And took France to a 1-0 game. And we dominated them. So out of the gate, there was this huge feel good factor. And I mean, again, all the things we were talking about the Spain team, we played quickly, we played efficiently. Our counter press was really good. Paraguay couldn't get into our half. All those things that dominate a soccer game, we did. And then our next two performances, even though we lost to Turkey, it was the second team. We played really well against Australia again. And so the confidence builds within the camp. The confidence builds within the country. And then we get to the Belgium game. We're playing at home. We haven't had to travel as much as everybody else. One of the benefits of being a host country. And the feel-good factor was just way, way high. And to be honest with you, I think if you went to Vegas, I think we were actually favored in the game over Belgium, despite Belgium having beaten us a couple of months earlier soundly, but it wasn't our full team. And the fact that we hadn't beaten European competition in about 15 games leading up to the World Cup. Wow. So those two factors, gave me caution, but I was caught up like everybody else, right? The red card.
Before we get to the red card, there's a couple of questions I want to ask you there first. One, the strategy of playing the second team against Turkey.
Yeah, I think that was part of continuing to build the cohesiveness of the group.
Okay.
Right. And I think that was really important because you didn't play the full second team, but the margins in our team, as in most teams, are not that great between the first 11 and the next 11, right? But continuity in our game is really important. And if you make too many changes, you lose that continuity. Yeah. And I think that, I think that's one of the best parts about that Spanish team. And the fact that, like, there are guys on the bench who came off the bench. They didn't care whether they're on the bench, they start the game, didn't start the game. It was irrelevant. And I think the U.S. had some of that going at the beginning of the tournament too. It's like, yeah. All right, let's win. Let's we all wear the same uniform, and it doesn't make a difference who's doing it as long as we're doing it together.
As those Spain players were taking off, I imagine the biggest game of their life, wanting to make a difference. What did they do? They hugged the other guy coming on the team and pat him on the back. And I'm like, okay, that shows the connection, the chemistry, the willingness to sacrifice. Those were moments that stood out to me, as well as during the hydration breaks. They were all locked in arms, all unified. I think that sent such a strong signal to me. And I think it's something we can learn as coaches of how do we stay connected in times of adversity for 90 minutes or as long as it takes.
Without question, Milt. And that's why you're so great, is that you observe and see those signs, right? That many times us coaches, we try to instill those things. We try to work those things into the way we do things, but sometimes we miss because we're so caught up watching the game instead of watching individuals and watching the team and how they're reacting with each other. But you're right. When Rodri's the best, center midfielder in the world, and he struggled last year with an ACL injury, and at Manchester City, many people were saying he was past his sell-by date, but no, he was the best player in the World Cup, the best, and they had the confidence to take him off,
which is unbelievable,
and replace him with maybe the second or third best midfielder in the world too. But that guy's sitting on their bench,
yeah,
right. But you never heard anything about who started in the media. There was nothing on that Spain team other than one team together to win. So, and I do think the U.S. had a lot of that going for them until the red card.
And so then the pressure's building, and we talk about the goal of coaching. We believe the art of coaching, the art of peak performance is knowing when to add pressure, knowing when to take it away. Everybody's caught up in that emotion. So they're just battling all those emotions anyway. And then that red card comes going into that game. And so just for the casual fan, and I ask you this question, how often is a red card appealed successfully?
Never. As a matter of fact, I'm on multiple text chains with high school friends and former college teams and this, that, and the other thing. And a couple of them were, can we appeal that? Can we appeal that? And my answer back to them was, they can appeal it, but it's never going to be overturned. They went to VAR. It is a red card, whether it was the right call or the wrong call, whether it was intentional or unintentional. It's a red card. And in our game, that is never overturned. Never. I think the irony of what happened, right, was that the entire U.S. team, the coach, the staff, the players, the player who was red carded, were prepared to play the game without him.
Yep.
And they were preparing for 4 days to play the game without Balogun.
You called me and said, hey, well, what do you think happened last night? And I said, I was trying to give you my psychological perspective. There's a lack of connection. There's a lack of chemistry. There's a lack of confidence. There's a lack of communication on the field. They just seemed a little disjointed. They were not playing well together. And I was asking, was the moment too big? Was the team better than who they played? And were they prepared for that? And that's when you brought up, hey, Milt, I think the psychology behind the red card, that not only were they not prepared with the team that was on the field, they were prepared not to play with him. And knowing that it is inconsistent with how the game of soccer has always been played, your other thought was there was a little bit of doubt in their mind of, should he even be playing? And you talk, he came out with an article, Valerian Balogun said, even in the Athletic afterwards, that he wasn't quite sure it was. Am I remembering that correctly?
Well, he didn't say whether it was right to play him or not, but what he did say is that he felt that it affected the players and the preparation. And it was clear that it had Milt. That team was a shadow of a team that had played in the first 3 games, and everything was still, the external preparation, being in Seattle where they had such a good performance before, the fans, everything was the same, except the team wasn't the same because there was doubt.
Yep.
Should this be done? Shouldn't this be done? The other thing that I think was critical too is that you handed motivation over to your opponent, right? So, if Balogun either isn't on the game day roster, whether he's available or not, if he's not on the game day roster, or he's on the bench, the message you're sending is, we can beat you without him. And that message was never sent.
Yeah.
Right. The second thing is that, in situations like that, and you saw all these situations, whether it's the Argentina-England game, whether it's the final yesterday, pressure mounts throughout the tournament as you go further and further into it. And the U.S. stated goal was to get past the round of 16 where we've been before and get to the 8. That pressure you could see on their face. Now they have doubt. Should he play? Shouldn't he play? And it's an unconscious thing as a player, because the way the game, I know the halftime show people liked yesterday, but there's no place for that in our game. If you're taking attention away from the actual game, right, and you extend it 27 minutes when it's supposed to be 15 minutes, right, it's the same thing. That's why it's not getting world reviews as being something, even though they have great entertainers and great music.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not what the game has been and what the game has been called for. And that was the doubt that was in the US's mind.
And a little bit of doubt goes a long way. And it's hard to be aggressive and consistent and courageous when you have that question in your mind. Should he be playing? Should he not be playing? And so one of the things I thought was really interesting is you said, whether he appealed or not, I thought maybe Belgium appealing the appeal was, okay, we're in their heads a little bit, but you're saying we should have not even started him, because one, it sends a message. We respect the way the game, the history of the game, the honor of the game, the integrity of the game. 2, it sends a message to our team. This is the team we prepared for, and we believe we're good enough to win without you.
Right. And I think that's, again, the margins. Yes, he had a fantastic World Cup. Yes, he had scored big goals for us. Yes, he had a great club season in France scoring goals. Yes, we haven't had that player for other World Cups. All that doesn't outweigh what you've been preparing to do. And I think there's another huge factor that goes into this too, Milt, is that we got punched in the nose early.
Yeah.
And our response to that was, Belgium scores early in the game. We haven't been in that situation so far in the World Cup. So how do we deal with adversity? Are we prepared for that? What are we going to do? And it just looked like we were frozen and running in mud.
Yeah.
We came into it a little bit, and this is my it's my take on hydration breaks. We came in, we scored the goal on a deflection, and then we came into the game a little bit, and then there was a hydration break. And we went into the hydration break and came out of it, and the rest of it was disaster.
It almost seemed like every restart, every kind of after that break, Belgium kind of got reinforced, re-energized, and went back on the attack. And if I remember correctly, I'm not sure Balogun, he made a difference in the game.
He didn't. I think he had one shot in the game, very few touches. He was a shadow of himself. And again, you've got to give Belgium credit, right? They are also coming off the bench with world-class players. They have, but it was an aging Belgium team. Their golden era and generation was now in their, early 30s, mid 30s. And, we're getting into the latter stages of the tournament, and we're playing at home, and it's the middle of the day, and it's open air. And I mean, let's go. Right. Yeah. And we just didn't have it in us. And I think it was the emotional piece and the fact that the decision came when the decision came. The decision came like less than 24 hours before the game.
Yeah.
And now you're asking people to react and and do you start them? Don't you start them? Well, yeah, we're just going to play our same team that's played up. It's not the same team. It's the same people, but it's not the same team.
Well, the last 24 hours, there's very little tactical changes or preparation for the most part. I know it's kind of a really quick turnaround, but just from a coaching perspective, your kind of game plan and your team, you've already got that played out for the most part, correct?
That's right. And there was only one player changed.
Yeah.
Right. But it's everything. That's why I called you, Milt, because this wasn't a tactical thing. This wasn't a soccer thing that Belgium was that much better than we were. Yeah. This was completely emotional, psychological, maybe a little physical, but even I didn't think Belgium had us in the physical elements of the game either. But I was fascinated that, because I've done that to teams myself, right? Uncertainty, who's going to play, who should play, confidence, all these things that go around team selection, tactical selections. You can freeze a team. You can freeze. I remember one of my first, I think we played in the quarterfinals of the NCAA tournament when I was at Brown. We're playing against the University of Virginia. And I gave the guys a 10-page scouting report. I knew that Virginia in and out. And we went out to play the game at Virginia, and guess what? My team looked just like the USA team. Yeah. And it wasn't until afterwards where I realized they had too much information. They couldn't think for themselves. And our game is so beautiful in the fact that it's a player's game. And the players have to be in peak mental, physical, emotional place in order for the best to come out. And when it does, and we did this many times in the tournament, it's beautiful to watch.
But when it's not, it's such a stark contrast to what you've seen and witnessed. I think, Bear Bryant had that great quote, "A confused player can't be a great player." And sure. I think the question we talk about all the time as coaches, as leaders, are they winning because of me or in spite of me? Am I helping them win, or are they having to overcome my decisions, my emotions, my reactions, my interference with making the simple complex? Am I making the complex simple or making the simple complex? I think that's what I'm taking from all of this, is not only how we've prepared the team, but what's the message I'm sending the team by my decisions, my strategy, by who's on the field? What's that underlying message? Am I building their confidence or am I creating doubt? I think that to me is what I'm hearing here from the England manager, from putting Balogun on the field or not on the field, putting him on the roster or not on the roster, regardless of what FIFA's decision was. There's an underlying message that we are sending the people that play for us, the people that we work with, that is bigger than sometimes the decision.
Yeah, and that's true, and you have to recognize that, and have people like you to help us recognize it. But I'll be honest with you. I thought Pochettino did a fantastic job, right? And you think about it a little bit, right? The guy's presented with this, less than 24 hours before the game. The leader of the free world has come out and said that he was part of asking for the right. And now the coach has got to make a decision. Do I play him? Don't I play? I mean, the burden that put on Pochettino.
Yes.
After he had done such a really good job of getting our team ready. The last point I'll make, and I'll go back to what I said in getting punched in the face at the beginning of the game and in the adversity piece, is that the internal leadership and the feel-good factor that had gone on for the U.S. throughout the tournament, when they face that adversity, it really has got to come from the people on the field.
Yep.
And they have to sense it and have the intestinal fortitude to change something and lead. I mean, and that's why leaders are so hard to come by. And I think that there were leaders in the team when things were going well.
Yes.
But I'm not sure we had the strength of leadership that we needed, like Argentina being down a couple goals, right? Like having a Rodri in your team. I mean, he's just a consummate leader. We still have to develop those types of people and have them show up, because I think that's just the next stage of where we need to go with the game.
Yeah, and I think the best teams I've ever been a part of at Clemson, with your soccer program, with football, with like any of the sports I've worked with, is when the players take ownership. And I was smiling when you talked about the intestinal fortitude and the guys on the field. I can't repeat what Gael said, I think, on our podcast of when they were courageous and brave, but I'll never forget it when I said, "Hey guys, how did you do this?" And I could just remember this great accent. Like I said, I can't repeat it, but it was basically saying, we had great courage and we stood the test and we stayed together. That is one of the highlights of that national championship run for that team, that they had the courage to fight. And it wasn't you or the staff as much as they took ownership, and they refused to let that adversity dictate how they played and how they showed up.
Yeah, no question. And I remember right where we were. There was a tent down at USF at halftime, and Gael was going off, and he wasn't the captain of the team. He had just come into the team, right? Yeah. He came from Oregon State as a transfer. And my staff wanted me and them to go in and calm him down. I said, no, you just stay right here. We're not going in there, right? And then it came out, and I'll leave the profanity out, but it was this. He said, this is my life. Nothing else. This is my life, and we need to play. We all need to play like this is your life. And it was beautiful, and it was unifying. And after that point, right, he didn't need an armband, but we were all following him.
Wow.
And it was in the point of adversity. We were losing the game.
Yeah.
Against an inferior opponent. So, yeah, I'll never forget him. I'll never forget that moment.
Yeah, that was fun to witness. I always love our conversations. I learn something every time I'm with you, and I appreciate you kind of making the effort to kind of break this down for all of us. And I think what I hear is the future is bright for soccer. What's the legacy going to be? And even for the U.S. men's team, how do we develop leadership? How do we get a little bit better? How do we stay connected? How do we prepare for success and adversity? I think those are the challenges that not only our team faces, but all of us face as we kind of go through this thing called life.
So I think that's a point, and why I love working with you, Milt, because you are able to take all these complex situations that are appearing and make the complex simple and instate it in a way that is understandable and that we all can relate to, and that teams and people and players and coaches have an opportunity to be able to, crystallize so they can be the best version of themselves. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. It's been a blessing. And like I said, you've made such a difference in my life and my career, and have opened me up to a whole new world of soccer, and introduced me to so many people from all across the world. I think, one of the highlights of last year for me is having 12 different languages out on Millpine playing paintball, and hearing some colorful language and all different dialects. That was a highlight to think in Liberty, South Carolina. But any final thoughts or comments? And we'll kind of maybe also think about outlook for the season here as we wrap up.
Yeah, no, I think you said it right. I mean, we're in the education business, right? The World Cup is also the education business, but it's educating the world into the principles that you talk about: unity and love and passion. And I think that here at Clemson, that's why I love my team, is because it does, by design, come from all over the world. We learn, we appreciate, we accept and embrace diversity within our team while pursuing excellence and emphasizing education. So I love what I do. I love that the World Cup was here. There was a laboratory for us to look at for the last 5 or 6 weeks. And I hope that we've been able to bring some insight maybe into some of your viewers and listeners.
Yeah, no doubt. And I appreciate you. You're the best. And for all of you listening, any comments, thoughts, questions for us, please send our way. And until next time, continue to be better and pursue better.